This is Do It for a Living, your source for inside information on the future of automotive performance.
People really do respect authority, even if they don't act like they do. And if you bring someone into your office and you give them a review that's bad and you tell them what they're doing wrong, 9 times out of 10, they really will make an effort to change. And in the beginning, I didn't do that. I figured everybody was a self-starter like me. It took me a while to understand that I could actually improve them by mentoring them.
What's holding you back from starting or growing your business into what it can be? Well, if you're listening to this, it's not a lack of information. What you're about to hear is all you need to get motivated and start making waves. Do It for a Living podcast details the journey of today's true players in their own words. Find out how they broke out so you can too. The time is now. The time is always now.
Welcome back to another episode of Do It for a Living. I'm Todd Ersley with My Shop Assist, and today I'm honored to have Steve Dinan. He is the founder, CEO, technical director of Dinan, and he has since moved on, and he's got a new venture called Carbon, and they are creating kind of like a high-performance dealership brand and chain for German cars, looking to do some Italian stuff, so we're talking like supercar modification kind of things here that kind of takes what he had created with Dinan and kind of steps it up, another level. So, Steve, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great.
And I really appreciate you coming on the podcast with us to kind of tell us your story. And so that's kind of the first thing we're going to get into is just kind of your background of getting into cars. And so I know you've got quite the colorful background of events, but if you can just kind of give us a brief introduction to what you were doing before you kind of got into before you created your own brand name of Dinan to start working on the M cars.
I'll just take you all the way back to the beginning because I think that's the place to start. As some people never figured out what they want to do for a living. I've known since I was about 5 or 6. Just always liked cars. In fact, I used to sit by the window in first grade and daydream about doing laps around the parking lot in a go-kart instead of listening to the teacher. So I've had the problem since the first grade.
Nice.
And my father was an electrical engineer, aerospace for McDonnell Douglas in St. Louis. That's where I grew up. My mother was a pianist. And it was a very interesting household. Both
you get some art and some science there.
Yeah, and they were interesting parents. They loved kids. They had 8 kids, Catholic, and they would do things like they would make a train platform every year. After Halloween, they would close the family room down, and they would spend literally 2 months making a winter wonderland from scratch, carving up wood and plaster Paris and lights and a running train, and then the wall would come down, and you'd come in as a little kid, and it'd be like you were at the North Pole, And every year was a new theme. My mother would sketch it. My father would engineer it. And one by one, as we got to be 10, each one of the kids became an elf and got to help on the project. And you had to go into the art side of it or into engineering. So that was my upbringing as a child.
That's pretty wild. That's like a big Christmas commitment. I'm like, I complained about having to put lights up on the house, and that's nothing compared to what you guys were doing.
No, we spent 2 months on this every year as a family. And, then on the summer, 4th of July weekend, my mother would put on a musical on the front porch and put up drapes as curtains and roll up. She had a grand piano, and she'd write a musical and make costumes, and we put on a musical. So kind of like Little Rascals, if you remember that old TV show, right? So that was kind of my upbringing. And my parents are the kind of people that, and I think that's part of my success, is not only were they, intelligent and well-educated people, but they believed if you worked hard, you could accomplish anything. And they instilled that in us every day. And you could come up with the craziest idea, and they would just say, well, go run with it. And even if they knew you were going to fail, they would just let you try.
Yeah.
Like one year I decided I saw an old World War II submarine movie. I said I was going to make a submarine out of 55-gallon drums in the basement. And they said, yeah, go for it. It never did get launched, by the way, and I probably would have killed myself in it. But it was still an interesting exercise, because then they got me a bunch of books on submarines, and there was no internet back in those days, and I figured out how to create ballast and how to seal the engine. And so I learned something about engineering trying to make a submarine that never got launched.
That's pretty wild. It sounds like it was an active childhood for sure.
It was. Yeah, I was a very energetic kid, probably a handful, I guess.
So when did you, going to college, did you follow the engineering side or did you follow the art side?
Oh, definitely engineering.
Yeah.
But I like to think that there's some art in my engineering. if you look at Dinan cars. And so I'm very proud of the fact that they're always cosmetically appealing and everything fits right. And, so I'm a little bit of an artist, but more of an engineer.
Yep. So did you get a real job right out of college, or was this something that, you planned on doing for a long time?
Well, I unfortunately got drafted during the Vietnam War.
Okay.
I got number 10 in the first lottery, and I joined the Air Force and worked on B-52s, radar and navigation computers. And then when I got out, I went to school in the GI Bill and got a job during the day as a car mechanic. Okay. And went to college at night.
Was it at a regular mechanic place, or was it, somewhere doing German import stuff?
I worked at several different places, but the last job I had was a BMW or independent repair shop, not a dealer.
Yep.
And that's how I got hooked on BMWs.
So is that when you kind of started getting your first car and maybe modifying it?
Well, I had a lot of cars up until that point. My first car was a 67 Hemi Charger.
Oh, nice.
The old, looked like a Marlin, the fastback with the 4 bucket seats. And then I had a 69 Hurstol's 442 and a 70 454 Corvette Roadster. So those were my first 3 cars. And then I fell in love with German cars. I fell in love with the engineering. And at that point in the 70s and 80s, the American car company really went downhill. Mm-hmm. And there wasn't really anything good that they were making. Yeah. So I shifted to German cars and never came back.
So walk us through kind of the sequence of events that led to you creating your own brand. It went from, sounds like you were, working as a mechanic during college and then maybe after college of, working on the cars. How did that transition go?
Well, while I was working as a BMW mechanic for 2 years, I saved up $5,000. And believe it or not, that's what I started Dinan with, $5,000 in 1979. My wife worked at Apple Computer. We lived up in Cupertino. She was the assistant to the software director at Apple. And she did the books for me. She was an accountant by trade.
Okay.
And I worked on cars during the day and then made parts and did modifications at nights and on weekends. I worked 7 days a week, 12 hours a day for 25 years. That's what I usually tell people. And now I'm an overnight success. But,
it comes with a lot of hard work. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's relentless. You have to not be shy of hard work. If you want to go home at the end of the day, you should not be an entrepreneur. It's not the life.
Yeah, there is no quitting. When you run your own business, it doesn't stop. And all of us have been there. You can't expect a 9 or 8 to 5 day. It's just not going to happen if you want to run your own business.
Yeah, and I started the business out of my garage at home. Until my neighbors complained and the city made me vacate the house because I had like 20 BMWs parked up. And then I rented a gas station with 2 stalls, an Arco station, did that for another 7 months. And then I rented a 5,000 square foot building. But when I started the business, I had to make a profit the first month to make the second month and had to make a profit the second month to make the third month and, so forth and so on. So it was a make or break every day, every month kind of thing. But I wanted to do it. So that was fine.
Were you like bleeding off customers from the BMW service shop? People coming in, and were they saying like, "Hey, I want to do," I don't know what time frame it was, but like coilovers or cold air intake or tuning or something like that. Was that how you were getting customers?
No, I actually went to my old boss, the BMW shop I worked at, and said, I want to make a high performance company. And if you let me use your space, I'll do all the work and spend my money. And I only want 10% of the profit. And he turned me down. That was probably the biggest mistake he ever made.
Yes.
I don't think he realized how hard I was going to work. Yeah. And I'm glad I didn't do it because I would have owned 10% of Dinan instead of all of it.
Yeah.
But he turned me down, and I went. I had 2 customers that had old Callaway turbo kits on them, and another customer had a BAE turbo kit. If you guys remember what BAE is, that we're going back to the 70s now. Bad turbo kits that I made upgrades for to make them work correctly.
Okay.
And this is back when cars had mechanical fuel injection on them. And so I got those 3 customers, but honestly, the rest of the customers I did not take from my old boss. I just got them by word of mouth.
Really? Yeah. So just kind of talking and doing stuff and proving it, huh?
Yeah, I mean, they would tell their friends that I knew a lot about cars, and they would come over. And honestly, 95% of the customers were just tune-ups and oil changes and brake jobs. That wasn't exotic work.
Yeah.
But it paid the bills.
Yeah.
And I made $75,000 the first year, which was a lot of money in 1979.
Yeah, that's
I was
absolutely
making
fantastic.
40. I was making 40 as a mechanic, so I almost doubled my income. The second year, I made 175,000. And by the time I was in business 5 years, I was making $450,000 a year fixing cars.
Yeah, that's pretty substantial growth curve there. That's almost doubling every year, sounds like.
No,
So
and
it's
that was
pretty
like
close.
making a couple $1 million in today's dollars.
Yeah.
So I figured out I was not only pretty good at cars, but I was a pretty good businessman, is what I discovered in the early years.
Yeah. So were you like to gain that revenue? Were you adding employees?
Yes. Yeah. By
Okay.
that point, I had 12 employees, I think, from
And-
about 1986.
Yeah. So still, you're growing quickly, and just as you needed more capacity, you just were able to hire people that could do the work. And was it kind of shifting towards the performance side, or was it sticking with the maintenance side?
Well, the beginning of the business was 95% maintenance, and then in 1986, I launched a high-performance brand. I was always dabbling in high-performance parts, and I was usually buying other people's products like Callaway's turbo kits and suspension technique springs and sway bars. But what I found was, and the reason I wound up starting Dinan is not that I really wanted to become a parts manufacturer, but the quality of most of the stuff I was buying was very poor.
Yeah, just not up to your standards.
Not up to my standards. The springs would sag, things would rub and not fit, the engine would detonate because the fuel injection wasn't tuned properly for the turbo, and I could go on and on and on for days. And so I started off by just fixing things like the Callaway kit I made a fuel enrichment system for and a wastegate fix. And then I started making my own springs because the springs I bought sagged and the car got lower. And then I started, and one by one, I replaced every part with a better part until I wound up making 75% of the stuff myself. And I said, well, if I'm making most of it anyway, why am I buying anything? Yeah, just finish it off. So it became a manufacturing business, but that really wasn't the goal.
Interesting.
It just sort of came out that way because I was very picky.
Were you outsourcing the manufacturing elsewhere, or were you trying to bring it all in-house, kind of from the get-go?
In the beginning, it was mostly outsourced. It's hard to find good suppliers as well. I went through 3 different spring manufacturers to find somebody that could make a spring that wouldn't fatigue. And I learned a lot about manufacturing back in those days. About 10, 12 years in, I don't know the exact time frame, I bought a new building because I'd made enough money to buy a building, and I started a manufacturing plant and started making the stuff in-house, actually doing the manufacturing, stamping and welding mufflers together and things like that.
Yeah, so it sounds like, it's not a quick progression, but it was pretty constant growth of that business. Just one thing after the other. It sounds like it was all going good, but was there ever a chance or ever an instance that you were like, man, I don't know if this is going to work? And, did you ever doubt yourself? And, how did you overcome that problem?
Well, I've never been the kind of person to doubt myself, but there certainly were some hard times where I thought I was going to go bankrupt. And I worked through them. I think if you run any business for a long period of time, you gain enough experience that you have tools in the toolbox to deal with things. The first couple of times is the hardest, and then it gets easier over time. And one of the things, like, I used to hem and haw about firing an employee. Was a poor performer for 6 months when I first started the business. When I was 25 years old when I started the business, and most of the employees were older than me when I hired them. So I was intimidated about firing them. And I finally had an epiphany one day. I said, you know what? They've already made the decision to leave. I just haven't told them yet because they're poor performing. And once I got that in my head, it got a lot easier.
Yeah, that is a fantastic point. And like a really good way to think about it is like, if somebody's not doing good work for you, and what is going to change? You're going to have to do something different. So I like thinking like they've already decided to leave. I just haven't told them yet. That's a really cool way to think about it. Yeah.
And the other thing I learned through that period as well is that people really do respect authority, even if they don't act like they do. And if you bring someone into your office and you give them a review that's bad and you tell them what they're doing wrong, 9 times out of 10, they really will make an effort to change. And in the beginning, I didn't do that. I figured everybody was a self-starter like me, and they were doing the best that they could. And I wouldn't attempt to change their habits. I would just either keep them or let them go. It took me a while to understand that I could actually improve them by mentoring them.
Yeah, being an actual manager, not just delegating tasks.
Yes.
So what was there ever an opportunity or like an instance that like was really bad, like maybe just a worst experience in business, whether it be from, revenue generation, or maybe like, just maybe a car that didn't work out how you were going to, or, you had some obligations that you couldn't meet. Was there anything that kind of sticks out in your head of like a bad experience that you had?
3 of them.
Oh, good. Yes. You probably
Really
have many more
ones.
than that, but there's 3 real bad ones. Huh?
Yeah. The worst one was the Great Recession. We all lived through that. My business went off 40% during the Great Recession. You don't need to modify a car. You need to pay rent. You need to buy groceries. You need to put gas in your car, but you don't need to modify your car. So that's, that sort of thing is the first thing that people give up when things are tight. And so that was extremely tough. The good news is I had made us money, and I had lived within my means, and I had a credit line for $3.2 million that wasn't used. Mm-hmm. And I had a house that was mostly paid for. And at the time, my wife, and this is part of the hard thing about running a business and starting a business, is everybody, even the closest people that love you the most, will tell you at some point you should give up. And the most important thing to be successful is not listening to anyone and not giving up, even the people that you love and trust. Yeah. So my wife told me to throw in the towel and quit, that it was just time to move on. And I said no. So I went all in, and I remortgaged my house, and I maxed out my credit line, and I wound up with like $5 million worth of debt in like 24 months. Yeah. I think my burn rate was like $20,000 a day.
That's pretty bad. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And then I think I whittled it down to 10 or something by firing a third of the staff. But I dug my way out of it, and it made money again. And I sold it and made a fair amount of money on it when I sold it. The other times that were hard were people think that because I have a good relationship with B&W, that B&W somehow was giving me technical secrets, and they weren't. Never have. So when B&W first came up with flash tuning, I was the first person to figure out how to flash software. Before that was an EEPROM, and that took me 18 months, and that cost me a lot of money.
I bet, yeah.
And then when they first did encryption, it took me almost 2.5 years to be the first person to hack the encryption, like when the 335 came out. Okay. To build a continued flash. So those are the 3 things that stand out in my mind: technical barriers and a Great Recession, things you don't really have any control over. Yeah. Yep. Regardless of how good of a businessman you are.
But it sounds like you were prepared, not 100% prepared, but psychologically prepared and somewhat financially prepared to, overcome those issues, especially with the recession side. Like, that's totally out of your hands. But if, like you said, if you don't live in a giant mansion or have 5 houses, or, you don't have that much debt, you can really leverage, your experience and your history to keep afloat, at least until the tide turns more in your direction.
No, and the other thing you have to do is, I had 72 employees when the Great Recession came, and I went down to 48 in 6 months. Yeah. I didn't really appreciate how deep it was and how long it was going to be when it started. So I didn't fire that many people right away. But by the time 6 months was up, I had fired, that many people, going into 48. And then what happens when you get rid of a lot of important people? You wind up as the entrepreneur doing that work for them. Yeah. So still got to get done. Yeah. Right. At some point, you believe that you've made enough money that you don't have to work that hard anymore. But when things like this happen, you go back to 12 hours a day, 7 days a week again. And if you're not willing to do that, and some people just aren't willing to make that level of commitment, you're not going to survive.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you guys made it out, because, it's just with the company that's been around that long and built such cool stuff, it hits everybody. And I'm glad that you were kind of prepared to get through that. And so you touched on a little bit, Dinan to BMW is not like AMG is to Mercedes, like that's an M thing. But, what kind of relationships were you able to build over the years with them? Was there any beneficial factors that helped, you be successful with networking or marketing or anything like that?
Yeah. It was an interesting relationship with BMW. They loved the media that I got. Back in those days, it was print, Car and Drive, Road and Track. And I think I wound up with 80 magazine road tests and 14 covers, before print media kind of went out of fashion. And of course, the BMW executives read them all, even if they pretended they didn't. And they would scold the technicians, the dealer, about not modifying the cars, but then they would meet me somewhere like at a racetrack and they go, "Oh, we love your work." So I knew that they really liked what I did, even if their official response was, it's a terrible thing to do to the car because it's perfect the way it's made. So the relationship started out like that. And then there was a president that came along in 1996, I think it was, 1995, named Vic Doolan. He was the president of BMW South Africa. Before that, he was a South African guy. And he got promoted to president of BMW North America. And he got here and he said, hey, I would like a relationship with our tuner. Who is it? And he took the product planner. His name is Rich Breckes. He now works at Cadillac. He's the product planner at Cadillac.
Okay.
I stayed in touch with him over the years. Great guy. And he went on a mission to fly around and visit all the BMW tuners and see who was real. And so they showed up at my shop one day unannounced. And I didn't know they were coming. And I gave them a tour. And at the end of the tour, he said, okay, other people are buying and reselling parts. You're actually engineering and making things. You're the only real tuner in this country. We would like a relationship with you. So BMW has started it. Now, I thought at that point they were going to give me technical information.
Yes, yeah.
Wouldn't you think?
You would think so, yeah. Hey, we're going to work together. That means you get this stuff, but no.
No, what's weird is they said, okay, you can sell product out of the dealerships, which is how I got that, as long as you match our warranty. And everybody thinks that BMW paid the warranty. They didn't. What happened is every time I affected an area, I had to cover that and any consequential damages. And they would cover the rest of the car that wasn't affected.
Okay, interesting. So it was like a supplemental insurance or a warranty policy that you were backing.
Yes, and
okay.
It wasn't an insurance company. I covered it myself.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
So anyway, they said, so we'll let you do it as long as you're going to take responsibility for everything you do, but we're not going to give you any technical assistance. And what's interesting is we had hacked the software at the time and made a flashing tool that was a little mobile device, and BMW liked it. And we also built into it diagnostics and data logging.
Yeah, cool.
And BMW liked it so much they took one back to Germany, and the people that made the diagnostics of BMW looked at it and liked it and sent back a really favorable review that it worked better than theirs. It was much simpler. But they still didn't give me any technical help and never have. Now, I've also won 11 racing championships for BMW over the years, 24 hours at Daytona twice overall, and 3 prototype championships with Chip Ganassi. So during those times, BMW actually sponsored my racing effort.
Okay, cool.
Because I was so successful because it helped their brand, but they still didn't give me technical support for the street cars.
They were really holding that close to their heart, huh?
Yeah, it's like it was, and when you have conversations with Germans, and we all know they're smarter than us, they'll tell you. And I love them as a people, by the way. I'm German by background, so I completely understand. They would tell you that we can't give you the technical information because you wouldn't understand it well enough to be able to use it.
Do anything with it.
And I would go, now time out. You're telling me you like my diagnostic tool. You were impressed by the fact that I figured out your software and re-engineered your car and made it run better. So without any assistance at all, I'm capable of doing it. But if you help me, I'm not.
Wow.
That
doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't.
Oh,
so that's
man.
the relationship with BMW went all the way up to the end. And in the end, I wound up knowing all the executives and the president and having lunch with them, and they'd come to the races and I'd hang out with them. And, they would, put my trophies up in the lobby of BMW North America, and they would tell the dealers I was cool, unofficially.
Mm-hmm.
So the relationship got to be really friendly, but never was really joined to the point where you would expect it to be, at least from my perspective.
Yeah, it wasn't, you're still making your products and backing them and doing all the research and R&D and development and everything. They're just there. It just sounds like they weren't really giving you that much as far as, upfront things or any secrets or really just anything to help you. They just wanted to say hi to you, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, they appreciated what I did for the brand. Obviously, with all the positive press, I did a lot for the BMW brand. I think I actually sold cars to them. I won a lot of racing championships, so I was obviously good for BMW, not just good for Steve Dinan. Mm-hmm. But it never got to the point of them sharing their sacred secrets with me.
Yeah.
People ask me what it's like to be a small company in a relationship with a giant company, and I tell them this is my description. It's like being a flea on the end of a dog's tail when he's wagging his tail and you're trying to hang on.
Just hanging on.
Right. Yeah. So that's my relationship was like. That's
very cool. But I mean, it did seem to me from, an outsider that, being able to be in the dealerships is a big, that's a big proof of your parts, like for a consumer, when you can go to the dealership and they'll install it or you can buy it there, that's quite an honor and a, pretty rare feat. I actually can't really think of any other place. I've seen small dealerships do that, like they'd do that back in the 60s and 70s and, put big engines in cars. Or we had a local Mitsubishi dealership here that did a staged upgrade to the Evo when they came out with a couple companies here. But, that was not a national thing, but you were able to get in nationally. So pretty big jump there, getting in, being able to sell your parts at a dealership.
No, we had a great warranty manager at the time named Roland Feiner, an old-fashioned German guy who believed your word was your bond. And when the relationship first started, he put a warranty liaison on the phone, and I put a full-time guy on too. So when a car came in the dealership was broken, we would get on the phone and we would discuss who was responsible. And either I would get the bill or B&W would get the bill, or sometimes we'd split it if we couldn't decide, and the customer just got the keys back and drove away. So it's seamless. They never knew what was going on. But in the beginning, he said to me, I said, I'm going to cover this, I'm going to cover that. And he goes, we will see.
That was his answer to everything, huh? Yeah.
Yeah. No, but after about 2 years, he came to me, he said, you know what, Steve, you're covering too much. It's once in a while, it's okay to say no. Because I had developed a philosophy that if I said no, that B&W would diss me.
Yes. Okay.
And so basically what had happened is if B&W said no, I would always say yes, even if it wasn't my fault.
Yep.
Which was an expensive decision to make, but I think it was the right one at the time.
Yeah, that's a long-term smart play.
It was an investment in the relationship, and they knew I was good for it, and I paid for everything, including diagnostic time, and I would even fly people around the country. I had 5 field reps to fix cars when the dealership couldn't fix them, and we got blamed for it. So nothing was ever denied, and everything was repaired.
Very cool.
Unless it was just ridiculously, not legitimate. You know what I mean? I turn things down once in a while, but not very often.
Yeah, like they hit a bump and puncture their oil pan. That's not your fault.
Yeah, I had a dealer once put a differential in. We used to put toe tags on them, say there's not oil in them because it's illegal to ship differential to oil because of
safety or environmental
safety issues
stuff.
With airplanes, right? Might catch the airplane on fire, and the dealership gave the customer back the car, removed the toe tag, and didn't put oil in it, and the differential seized. And they sent it back to me, and all the bearings and the gears were blue, and they wanted me to warranty. And I told them I wouldn't. And they go, we're never going to sell Dyne ever again. I said, okay, well, that's fine.
Yeah, we don't want you selling it. Yeah.
And they wwere a good dealer. And by the way, they didn't leave, and they did pay for the diff. They were just trying me on.
Yeah.
So once in a while, you have to be firm. But 99 times of 100, I would pay for it, even if I didn't think it was my fault.
Wow. Just to keep that reputation going, huh?
Yeah, and that relationship with B&W, and over time that got easier. But the other interesting thing about working with a really big company, and I used to think that a company would make a philosophical decision, and the philosophical decision would last for a lifetime. And that was naive of me, never having worked at a big company. Mm-hmm. What it really is it's the opinion of the guy who happens to be in charge.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. And when the president, Vic Doolin, left, the next one came along, he goes, well, how did I inherit this mess?
Yeah.
And you have to restart the relationship over again every time management changes.
Yeah,
And you have to go back there and sell them on the idea that you're a good guy, and your history is not necessarily passed on when the guy's passing the job on the next guy. He's more worried about the corporation, not you as an outside supplier who happens to be in the dealership.
An aftermarket outside supplier.
Yeah. So I had to go and resell myself every time there was a management change. And every time there's a warranty manager change, I had to go resell myself as to how we got this relationship to start with. So that was really tough.
Yeah. Yeah. I cannot even imagine what that would be like. Because how big, I guess Dinan is maybe growing again, but what, at its largest, how many people worked there?
72 at its largest, and we did $1 million a month, approximately 3,000 cars a year.
Yeah, so that's a very large operation in the aftermarket side, but you're comparing yourself to a manufacturer of cars, so you felt really small, but you would be the biggest guy in the room at any, at most performance things. So, yeah,
give you some perspective on that. I asked B&W once how much revenue they generated selling replacement batteries and floor mats, and each one of those items was more gross revenue than my entire company.
Than the whole company. Jesus, yeah.
Replacement batteries and floor mats.
Yeah.
So that gives you some perspective.
Just kind of let you know how small you really are, like how little we care about you. It's cool, but at the end of the day, the dollars don't make as much sense as some of the the non-frilly stuff.
Yeah.
Man,
everybody
totally
needs
crazy.
A battery. Nobody needs to modify their car. So it's a sale that's guaranteed,
Yes. Yep. So what kind of brought on the decision to sell the company? Before we get into the next venture, I just am curious to know what did you just see a turning point? We're like, okay, I'm ready to move on to something else, or did an offer get put out there that was too good to pass up?
Well, three things kind of came together. One is Chip Ganassi Racing, after he won 3 championships with him, offered me a job to launch the new Ford GT program with him.
Okay.
And I love racing.
Yeah.
The second thing that happened was the business had kind of run its course and had stopped growing for a few years.
So it reached the maturity phase.
Yes. And also I'm 64 right now, and I looked at the wife and they offered me a lot of money for it because the brand is a coveted brand, and we decided that we would never have to work ever again. And when you start a business from scratch and you're 25 years old with $5,000, that's kind of your dream.
That is the goal.
Millions of dollars, right? That is the goal. Yeah. So I seized the offer because I wasn't sure another one was going to come along that was going to be as good, because it was a good offer. Okay. So those three things the stars kind of lined up, as I say. And I moved on. Was it a private investor, or was it like a hedge fund, or? It was a private equity group out of Connecticut. Okay. Called Dubin Clark. They owned, I don't know, dozens, if not hundreds of companies. Mm-hmm. They also own B&M Transmission, Hurst Shifter, Flowmaster Mufflers. So they're in the automotive space. Well, they also owned a company that made targets for pistols, paper targets, and they also made porta potties, So they were just a private equity group, but they had an automotive division. They had a guy who kind of knew cars, was an automotive manager of the automotive division, kind of a good guy, named Brian Applegate. So I liked him. So it seemed like a good deal for me. Yeah. I had lots of offers over the years, but none of them were what I would be willing to sell it for. Yeah, what you actually want to sell for. Yeah, well, I've never even gotten to the point of talking dollars yet, because we're still growing. It's still in the infancy phase. So someday that may be fun to play with. But, talking to guys like you, where you spend, 35 years, 40 years? That's a very long play, and it sounds like it has all paid off, and now you get to go on to bigger and better things. Yeah, let's hope. My wife is upset that I didn't retire and play golf, but I'm just not the retiring type. No. I'm probably going to work till the day before I die, so that's fine. That makes me happy. I don't think very many people retire and play golf anymore. I think there's so many opportunities to do more things now that's kind of what everybody does. Yeah, she's very good at retirement. Yeah. She's a professional. I'm just not. I would like to be a professional retirer. I think that would be a pretty good job title. So on that, let's just take a real quick break here, and then we'll be right back.
We all know owning a shop is difficult, so we created My Shop Assist to help you manage the various jobs. Whether you run a machine shop, a performance tuning shop, build off-road trucks, or even do powder coating, My Shop Assist can help you. It is completely online and will help you schedule the jobs, log time on each task, track parts orders, and take pictures of the work. You can even export your jobs from My Shop Assist into QuickBooks as invoices. So if you're interested to improve operations at your shop, check out myshopassist.com to start your 30-day free trial.
Okay, we're back with Steve Dinan, and we've been talking a lot about the Dinan brand and all that, and we touched on that you have now sold it and it's on to somebody else. So tell us about your new venture with Carbon. I gave it a brief introduction, but if you can kind of explain, maybe what the business goal, what the goal is for that business, and then what you've done so far, and then what you plan to do in the future.
Well, since this is kind of a business show, let me talk about the reason the business is structured the way it is and why I'm moving in the direction I'm moving in. I've always been the person that kind of sees where the market and the world is heading just naturally. And I believe in 20 years that 90% of the cars will be self-driving, and half the world won't even own a car. You'll order an Uber and it will drive itself to your house and take you where you need to go. Mm-hmm. And it will go back and park itself in a parking lot waiting for the next order. People that are wealthy enough to own a car will, but your average person just will use that instead of mass transit. I believe there'll still be 5% of the population that has cars because they just like them. Yep. As a hobby, like you play golf or anything else, right? Collect
Same
wine
reason people have vintage cars or muscle cars or something. It's
right.
They're awful, but you have them.
Right, and these will be new cars. So I think what's going to happen, we're going to have mainstream transportation pods. I guess is what I would call them. And then we will have exotic cars for people who like cars, and there are probably not going to be a lot in between. There might be luxury pods, but it's not going to be like we think of the car industry now. And the other thing you have to realize too is when a self-driving car gets into an accident, if the computer made the misjudgment, not the driver, you can't be really held responsible for the insurance. So that falls upon the car manufacturer. I don't know how many people have really thought about that, because they're now technically liable for the malfunction that caused the accident.
Yeah, they wrote the code that directed the car. So
right, that completely changed the dynamic of car insurance and ownership and everything. So I've decided that very wealthy people will have cars for fun, and I love cars, and I love those kind of cars. So I'm going to cater to those customers. So I've moved up market to people who have fun cars as a hobby. They might track them. They might drive them on Sunday. You could even drive them to work now, but I don't think you will in 20 years. Mm-hmm. So that's the impetus of the business direction. I've always liked other brands other than BMW. It's just that I was the BMW guy, and I had a relationship with BMW, and it would be bad for me to like another brand, so I just didn't.
It would look bad if you rolled up in a Mercedes every day, huh?
Right.
Yeah.
So now I have a C63 Mercedes, a Porsche 911 Turbo S, an M4.
All the fun toys.
Yes. Yeah. So I have one of each now, and I have 2 Audi R8 race cars racing in IMSA right now.
Nice.
So I have all 4 brands, and I like them all for different reasons. There's both good and bad points to each one of them. And the interesting thing is I've learned a lot about each one's strengths and weaknesses. And there's things I can apply from one to the other, which is also interesting too. I never had that opportunity before. So what's happened over the years, I've had the relationship with BMW and the dealerships. The dealerships have grown into giant conglomerates. AutoNation, Sonic, Penske, with hundreds of dealerships, hundreds of billions of dollars of revenue, and they're run from the corporate level up down to the dealership, and the dealers delegated as to what they're allowed to do. And it's not like it used to be. When I first started the business, a guy owned the dealership. Okay. Yep. Like Henry Schmidt at San Francisco.
It was his last name as the dealer name.
Right. Yeah. And he owned it because he could have run any business, but he liked cars. Okay. And so I could easily walk into those dealerships with a really cool Dinan car, and the owner of the dealership who loved cars would fall in love with the car, and he would decide to become a Dinan dealer. Mm-hmm. And that's how I sold it, because my relationship with BMW didn't require the dealers to sell Dinan, it just gave them the opportunity to.
Okay, cool.
So I still had to go pitch each one of them. And when I sold the business, we had 180 of them. But what happened is I was doing the same amount of revenue with 110 dealers as I wound up doing 180 at the end, because as the dealerships grew in size, they came more and more disconnected from the enthusiast customer. And each dealer did less volume, and I had to have twice as many dealers almost to do the same amount of revenue I had done 6 or 7 years earlier. Mm-hmm. So I saw the writing on the wall as a dealership that the company wasn't really going to continue to grow in the same way I had envisioned it. And that eventually the dealerships might drop the brand altogether or care very little about it, because like we talked about, they sell more batteries than they sell Dinan. Yeah. Right. So we're not an important part of the revenue either, even from a business standpoint, which is all the parent company cares about. They don't really care about cars anymore. So the dynamic of the relationship with the customer and the dealership and me changed. So I decided I needed to make a place where people who love cars could go. So the impetus of the business was I'm catering to the people that love cars, the high-end cars, and I'm giving them a place to take that car. And we also do car repair, service and repair, and modifications. It's kind of like a really high-end speed shop, hobby shop, service center, but that's a nationwide brand that you can trust. Okay. So that's how I got here.
Yep. So are you selling cars or just working on them?
Just working on them.
Okay.
Right now I have 2 service centers. Thinking about opening up 2 more in Los Angeles. We have 2 in Northern California, so we're on the verge of opening up 2 more. Okay. And we have a high performance division, and we have a racing engine business, and a streetcar engine development business, and a racing team. Okay. So right now it's up to 5 divisions already.
You're kind of spreading it out to make it, siloing each little area though.
And I've always done that. I've always had an electronics division and a hardware division and service. And so it's the same thing I've always done. It's just that instead of sending the service work to the dealer, I'm doing it myself. So 80% of the business I do is just car repair. Okay. Diagnosing a check engine light on or a brake squeak or whatever. And I have BMW factory service technicians a highway from the dealer that fix your car. And they also install the high performance parts. And I have a team of people that used to work at Dinan, honestly, for me again, who like me and followed me over, and they're helping me develop products again. So I know them and trust them. Very
cool. So what is the typical interaction from the customer? So they're buying like a new M4 and they bring it to you, and are you able to, you're selling them on what parts to get, you're installing them, you guys are tuning them, it's kind of like a German import, like a German performance shop.
Yeah. In the old days when I was a kid, they used to have speed shops, and the speed shops used to put your headers and your Holley carburetors on before it was illegal smog-wise to do it. They actually had a shop in the back where they do install. So it's kind of like that for modern cars.
Okay, so you're just picking the market of high-end German and hopefully Italian cars.
Yes.
Okay.
And also we do car repair because honestly, there's not enough high performance work to pay the bills, and you have to eat.
Yeah.
And as we all know, the dealerships make most of their money in the back end servicing cars, not selling them in the front end.
No,
and
yeah.
that's true of my place as well. But also you have a relationship with these people after you've modified the car and they trust you. And they want to bring it there. They don't want to take it back to the dealer because when they go back to the dealer's going to give them a hard time about modifying the car, and they're going to tell them that the warranty is void, and they're going to have that battle every time they go in. So I'm saving them from that as well, or trying to.
Are you able to do some of the warranty work that's needed?
I'm not,
Okay.
but I know the ins and outs of the warranty laws and what the manufacturers can deny and not deny based on my experience at BMW, and I can certainly help the customer get the car warranted if it's legitimate.
If it's a problem, yeah. But if you put a new engine and a turbo kit on a car, they're not going to get to take it in for a timing chain or something like that. Is it going to be? They're going to have to come to you for that one.
Yeah, and I'm the owner on that one anyway. I mean, one of the things I've always done that made Dinan a great brand was a lot of people in the aftermarket, when they modify a car, they don't really do their due diligence to see if the car is going to be reliable in the long haul. They just tune it and get on to the next one, and then they use the customer as a way to do their durability testing.
Yes, yeah. Because I mean, it's usually like you have to do it that way. Like you can't afford to build an engine and run it when you're a single person or 3-man shop. But yeah, when you have the means to actually do durability testing, you can really put your money where your mouth is on that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but I've always done that, even when the company was small, even if I had to drive the car night and day to see what would break and take it apart and look at it. And so my new company, if I've made a modification, I consider myself responsible.
Cool.
I've always been that way, and I'm still that way. I think that's the right way to run a business. I mean, you're certainly not going to buy a car from BMW and Mercedes, and they're going to take it and they're going to say, well, we're not responsible for that anymore. You bought the car, you expect them to be responsible. And I think any real company does that. I think it's the proper way to run a business.
Very cool. So when you created this venture, did you do it on your own, or did you kind of get maybe some of your old buddies or new people invested in it to like create this new high performance repair shop?
Well, so far I have $4.5 million of my own money in it.
Okay.
I don't have any
upfront investment.
Yeah, not super huge, but a significant for me. And that's one of the reasons my wife wanted me to retire and play golf, because she didn't want me to spend that money. But in any event, no, I don't have any investors yet. I'm out looking for private equity now. My plan is to open up 100 of them nationwide.
Okay. And then what sort of things are you looking to leverage to do this? Because to me, the hardest part is the people, getting qualified, knowledgeable salespeople and technicians. So what is your plan to scale up that very difficult aspect of scaling a business like this?
Boy, we'd have to spend a couple hours talking about that. But the answer in short strokes, it's going to have a fairly large human resources department, like a big company. It's got to be an ongoing capabilities to train and test people. Yeah. And also recruit. I'm doing that all on my own right now because the company's so small. I only have.
You got two places in one city, so.
Yeah, I've got 16 employees right now. That's all I have, and so I'm doing that myself. But it's if I get an investor and the company starts growing, and our growth target is 4 dealers a year, there's going to be a human resources person in a training department.
Okay. Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I was talking with the Bondurant family on their podcast interview a while ago, and they were like, our big plan is to have several Bondurant schools throughout the world, and they were like, our biggest problem is going to be training the instructors, so they were going to be doing that at their facility, and then certifying these people as Bondurant instructors to go out and lead the ones around the country. So was just curious on if you obviously you have a plan for it, but to me that just the biggest complaint from all the shops that we talk with is just, I can't find anybody, and it's just, that to me seems like a big struggle. It's
a big problem right now. Young people, young men and women don't seem to want to do blue collar manual labor. At least not as much as they did with my generation. So you run an ad now for a technician and no one shows up.
Yeah.
And dealers are poaching them from each other, and the car manufacturers are paying the schools to take the graduates as they come out of school and reimbursing them for their tuition so they can have some kid and train him. So yeah, huge shortage of technicians and really high paying job right now. I mean, an average technician in California makes $100,000 a year. As a mechanic.
Yeah.
It's good pay.
Yep.
People talk about there's no jobs, there's no workers. You have the same problem with CNC operators, computer controlled machines. You can't find them either. You have to bring them in and train each one yourself. It's a real problem that needs to be addressed by the government, both state and federal. There needs to be more trade schools.
Yeah.
Because, just like we're talking about cars driving themselves, automation is going to take any basic assembly line, manual labor, even driving a truck and unloading is all going to disappear with robotics.
Yep.
If you don't have a skill of some kind, it doesn't have to be a 4-year degree. It has to be at least a 2-year one, though. If you don't have a skill of some kind, you're not going to be employable in 20 years. But yet our system is not developed to bring those people into the marketplace.
Yeah, and I've done a couple things with SEMA in attempts to kind of spread that sentiment is really what it is, and it's very difficult to get people off of the college path that really shouldn't be going to college. Just say like, it's not in your financial best interest. You're not going to get anything out of it. Here's this industry that's really cool, but there's just this like aura of not successfulness if you don't get your 4-year degree. And I hate seeing that. And I hope hope somebody can figure something out, because it like you said, it's going down the path of not having enough employees to handle it. And now that the country's at like 4 or 3.9% unemployment or something like that, I mean, that is astonishingly low and should scare a lot of people that are looking to grow their business, because there's nobody there to do the jobs.
Yeah, there's so many people though that have poor paying jobs, either living in on the poverty line or just above or below that need a skill, and our system just isn't set up to provide them with one. And I think that's a shame. And also the industry is suffering as a result of not enough skilled workers as well. So it's something that needs to be addressed from a societal standpoint. It's not my area. I'm not a
I was going to say you need to have a Dinan automotive tech school.
But it's a real problem. So yes, the good news is that I have enough of a reputation that people kind of want to work for me. They think the work is cool. So when I can get a young man to come in and interview, they generally want the job really bad, and I have my pick of the litter. So I'm lucky enough to find some really highly skilled people, but I wind up running an ad now for 6 months and sifting through 30 or 40 guys before I find one that meets my standards.
Yep.
So that's going to be the biggest challenge. I agree.
Yeah. Good luck with that. You're going to be hiring a lot of people. So hopefully you can get something figured out and it all works out. Cause that business model seems cool to me, to kind of, maintain and soup up cool cars. Like, I hope that doesn't ever go away, but it may go smaller, but I don't think it'll go away. I like your theory of the future of, just there's still going to be some of it, and people still race horses. That's what my business partner says. Like, we're not using them for transportation anymore, but horse racing is a huge business still. So,
or just riding them even. A lot of people
even just riding, yes.
Homes, a stable, they just like riding. And people feel that way about cool cars too. So I think the hobby part of the car industry, enthusiast country, will always exist. I agree with you. It will shrink and become more highly focused. But I think eventually the cars are going to report to the police when you're speeding, if you're even allowed to drive them by yourself. And so people are only going to be able to enjoy those kind of cars at the racetrack anyway. So I think also the focus is going to be more on the lines of a track day car that's still streetable.
Yeah. I am like a diehard car nut like everybody else, and I am very excited for the day of autonomous cars, because as much as I enjoy driving, I don't really enjoy commuting. So it's like, I'm very excited to not have to do those kind of tedious tasks, but I still would like to be able to get out on the track. So I think that. And
by the way, 95% of the people can't drive anyway, so it's probably going to be, it's probably going to be a good thing.
It will be, yes.
So, even though they all think they're good drivers.
Oh, yes. Yeah, the robots are going to be excellent drivers for everybody. And just the possibilities are endless. I love talking about the future car stuff, and nobody knows exactly where it's going to go, but I hope I'm pretty confident in kind of how you're thinking about it, that there will still be an enthusiast side that'll be very strong, if not smaller, but still very strong.
Yeah. Just like there's not as many horses as there used to be, right? Everybody used to use them for basic transportation, but people still love them.
People still love them.
They still ride them, and I think it's going to be like that.
So about, advertising the business. So kind of tell us what you're doing to get the word out there for this Carbon business that, hey, here, we've got this new high-end place where we can repair and modify your cars. Or what venues or avenues are you going through to get the word out about that business?
Well, a lot of digital marketing these days. I mean, I started out with print, and I had a lot of experience with print, and it was a painful transition from print to digital.
Mm-hmm.
I think the digital media has become mature now, or more mature. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
In the beginning, it was so splintered that it was hard to decide where to put your money. I don't think it's that hard anymore. But we're doing a lot of SEO, AdWords, as well as YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. Blogs.
Are you taking care of it in-house, or did you hire a PR firm to do that for you?
No, the fine folks at Con Media.
Oh, okay. Yep.
They're great folks. They did my digital marketing when I owned Dinan, and they did a wonderful job. Honestly, the best digital marketing company I've ever worked with, and I've worked with a few that told me they were great, but didn't turn out to be. But these guys actually work hard and know what they're doing. So when I started the new company, I went straight back to them. That's
cool. Yeah. So I've had several guests on leading up to this one that were connections through them, and so it seems like they've been doing a good job of spreading the word. And you guys are really the first one that's kind of an installation. Most of them have been part manufacturers, but are you looking to manufacture parts as well? Are you looking to get back into that?
Well, it's the same problem I had before. I decided that I didn't want to do any manufacturing this time, but I had the same problem where I would buy something and and I don't want to mention any brand names, but I bought 2 coilover kits to go with the electric shocks from my C63 Mercedes, and one of them was poorly tuned and the car didn't handle right. The other one made noise.
Okay. Yep.
So what I'm doing is certain things you can buy, like Honeywell turbos and BorgWarner turbos, and they're from a big company. They're good quality if you buy a bigger turbo. So some things you can purchase. But I'm making my own engines. That's why I bought the engine shop. When I sold Dinan, I bought the engine shop back and the racing division because they didn't really want to do racing.
Okay.
Yep. They wanted the parts company and the brand name, the intakes and exhaust, the high volume where the money was, because they're money guys.
Yeah. Yeah. The engine and the race team doesn't, on paper, make any money.
Yeah, I've made money at racing over the years, but it certainly isn't consistent or very profitable.
No.
I think I made a little bit of money more than I spent over the years, but after B&W started sponsoring me, but I sure lost a lot of money before I got to that point. So it's certainly not the kind of thing a money guy wants to talk about. It's an emotional decision. So what I'm doing is I'm buying things like turbochargers. I'm buying still intake and exhaust system from my old company Dinan, and looking for those brands for B&W or for Audi and Mercedes and Porsche as well. I'm making my own software, my own engines, and my own suspensions, because I'm very picky and I can't find anybody that makes anything that meets my requirements.
Yep. Yeah, so just back through the cycle again, huh?
Yeah, so I'm attempting to make less this time than I made last time.
Okay.
Because the overall supply chain has improved over the years, I have to say, but there's still the aftermarket as a general rule. And this is what aftermarket doesn't seem to understand. Part of the reason I got the relationship with B&W that I had was that I actually engineered things and did durability testing and was willing to stand behind them and made them emissions legal.
Yep.
Do you know any other aftermarket tuners like that?
No, they're having to become that way now, but it's very few and far between that have had anything like that.
I don't know of any other than myself. I know some people sort of say they're going to do it and put a 2-year warranty and then kind of dodge it by telling you to take the tune out of the car and try and stick it on the dealership. Things like that. But that doesn't build a good relationship with the car manufacturer if you're trying to stick them with a bill, trying to cheat them, know. So so it's the aftermarket as a whole is guys that like cars, that like to modify them, that don't really have enough engineering knowledge. And don't have enough money, like you said earlier, and or the desire to do the durability testing. They're not willing to spend the money to make an emissions legal. They're not willing to stand behind it after the sale. And this terrifies car companies. They run the other way.
Yeah.
And I don't blame them. I would too. So the same problem exists when you try and modify your cars. You'll go through dozens of products, and I buy them now and test them on a regular basis to find something that's worth selling. They are out there, but it's not as common as you would think.
You would hope,
forums, right? It's more like 10% of it is worth using and 90% of it isn't, rather than the other way around, which is what it should be.
So are you looking to continue the emission certification? Are you getting anything you build CARB certified now?
Yes, we will be doing CARB certification. I had a 5-year non-compete clause with Dinan, which ends June 1st.
Oh, so you're ready to get going again, huh?
Not that I'm counting the days. I think it's 17 left or whatever.
Yeah.
So I've been engineering for about a year getting ready.
Okay.
I can't sell until after June 1st, but we're just starting with, and again, I'm attempting to compliment Dinan, so I don't think there'll be much friction with them anyway. I'm using their colder intakes and their exhaust systems. I like them a lot. I'm using some of their bearings and bushings and suspension systems, and then I'm making my own engines, buying turbochargers and doing my own software, and I'm making some of my own suspension components of things that they don't make.
Yeah, so it won't be you won't be too what's the word? You won't be cannibalizing their industry too much.
I'm hoping to complement them as opposed to have friction with them. Other brands, it's been harder for me to find quality players. Because honestly, I think I did a very good job of creating a quality brand, and there's, like we talked about just a few minutes ago, there's not very many of them out there. So I'm struggling to find quality players in other car brands. But I found some, and so you basically, if I'm selling it, it's gone through a rigorous test, and you can believe that it's good, or I wouldn't be selling it.
Very cool.
If I'm making it, it's because I couldn't find anything.
Anywhere else, yep. Gotcha.
Right, because I don't really want to make anything is the answer to the question.
So that's an opportunity and a warning to any high-end aftermarket part manufacturers is make something good and Steve will sell it for you. Make something crappy and he's going to make it better. So moving on a little bit, what kind of schedule are you working now? Are you back into that 7 days a week, 12-hour a day kind of deal now?
Well, I'm trying not to be, but however, I've just done the last 10 days in a row at like 18 hours a day.
Jesus.
But no, I'm trying to keep it to 6 hours a day. I'm trying to take off, show up late, and leave early every day. I'm trying to delegate. But it's hard when the business is small. One thing I learned about a business is like a child. At certain times it really needs you, or even a relationship with a spouse or a girlfriend, right? And you can't ignore it when it needs you. You have to give it when it needs it, or it won't be there. And there are certain times where things are clicking along well, and it does need the attention, and you can skate. And not work so hard. So you have to be able to recognize those, and I think I have the ability to do that now, where sometimes I just have to work a lot and sometimes I don't, and it depends on what the business needs.
Very cool. Yeah, that's a good thing that you've learned over the years, and so I'm, hopefully it'll keep whittling down. You're able to delegate and get that stuff going without you having to make every single decision.
Yeah, I like to delegate. I'm a good delegator, but I also like to show up for work and see what's going on and make sure it meets my standards. And it's sort of, I feel, what my job is, to find the right people and set the tone.
What is something that you may do differently to make yourself successful that others may have not thought about?
Well, I think we touched on a lot of it, which was, actually doing durability testing and real engineering and making emissions legal and standing behind the product. I think that's most of it. I mean, I just run my business like a real company. And no real company is going to make a product and they ignore their customers and not stand behind it after the sale. Yep. No real manufacturer to tell you to remove the product from the car and stick some other manufacturer with the warranty claim. Is their responsibility. So I think what I do better than everybody else is I run it more like a real business. Yeah, you're treating it very professionally, not just flying by the seat of your pants. Yeah, I'm also a good car engineer too. I don't want to overshadow the business side of them. I'm a very good car engineer, and I hire good people, and I recognize that talent, and I'm good at working with a team. Like, for example, we started a new race team this year, 2 Audi R8s. I've never raced a mid-engine car before, never raced an Audi before. We showed up at Daytona with 30 cars in the grid, and we qualified second the first race. So yeah, I've always been pretty good fantastic. We ran second most of the race, but unfortunately, with an hour to go on a yellow flag restart, the driver spun out and got collected by someone. So we wound up with a DNF, which was disappointing because we almost got second place points the first day. But that's okay. We're going to win some races. I know we are. We've always been able to do that. And so I'm good at engineering cars, and I'm good at seeing what they need. And I've always had this gift ever since I was a little kid. If I can feel a car and hate to use the word talks to me because it sounds metaphysical, but I just get a sense for what the car wants and needs more than, even when I have really good engineers that work for me, they can design and draft and measure and calculate and look at data. They just can't feel the car like I can. Even when I have professional race drivers that might be a touch faster than me in a car, I can still feel more than they can, even though they're professional race car drivers. So my gift is I'm not really the fastest guy. When I was a pro racer, I was maybe half second off the fastest guy, more like a third, fourth, fifth place guy from a speed standpoint. But I always had the best handling car, and I had the more sorted car. So I would be consistently up front because I had a better piece of equipment, because I made it that way, because I could feel what it needed.
Yeah, we struggle with that a lot with the amateurs. Building, weekend race car kind of deal is just, how does it feel? Oh, it feels fast. Okay, well, I guess we're done. It's just need a little bit more information about, turn in or grip or is something picking up and something. So it sounds like you've got that skill set just built into your body somewhere.
Yeah, I think what makes great race car drivers is they're super fast, have great hand-eye coordination, and they also have that feel. And I wasn't a super great race car driver because I didn't have the natural hand-eye coordination. But I've also met a lot of race car drivers that have the hand-eye coordination and have no feel. And the super great ones, like the Ayrton Sennas and Michael Schumachers have both. And that's what makes them great, right? I mean,
yeah, that's why they're fast.
I was blessed with one of the two. Very few people are given both.
So what is your 1-year plan for Carbon? Where do you want to see it 1 year from now?
Oh, boy. I'd like to find an investor so that I could go on my path of opening up for a year.
And so are you going to starting in California, and you're going to make your way west? Or make your way east?
Los Angeles, probably Portland and Washington, and somewhere in the southeast like Florida, and then the northeast like Massachusetts area or Connecticut. So I kind of have a place where somebody can go, because in the beginning, since there won't be 100 of them, it has to be close enough that everybody can get to one.
Yep.
So that I can get the high performance customers. Even if they don't come in for regular service, I can get them for the modification work.
Okay.
And local customers for service. So we're kind of going to geographically place them where the largest markets are, and far enough apart to where they don't cannibalize from each other. Yeah. Eventually, there'll obviously be like 7 or 8 in Southern California and 4 or 5 in Northern California. I mean, it's going to be all the major markets. B&W has approximately 400 new car stores in the United States and Canada. We're going to have 1/4 as many as them, we think, is what the market will bear.
Okay. Yeah, so it's getting there. Just need a couple more things before you can start making that step. So what about what is your 5-year plan for the business? This is what we call the big, hairy, audacious goal.
I'd like to make a full-blown manufacturing plant in a different state, because I can't afford to manufacture in California anymore.
Okay. They are offering fantastic incentives here in Dallas. So everybody that I know is moving, or every manufacturer that I know is moving their like facilities here to Dallas. So come on down.
We'd like to move on to exotics like Ferraris and Lamborghinis and things like that as well. And I'd like to have the company to make enough money that I could afford to have a race team without a sponsor. Right now I have a sponsor. Not that I don't want sponsors, but I'd like to have enough money from a profit standpoint that I could spend part of the marketing budget on it. And then it doesn't come and go with the sponsors. Because part of the problem with motorsports with me over the years has been some years I've done great and some years I have no money.
Yeah.
And I don't show up,
Yeah. Man, yeah. So that's when you have all the decision making power, you can do whatever you want with it. You're not relying on them to fund it.
Yeah, I mean, our budget is $20,000 a month per store advertising.
Okay, yeah, that's
okay. So if you have 100 stores, you can do the math.
Yep.
And I could afford to spend a couple $1 million on a race car a year, no problem. It'd be like 5% of the marketing budget,
So are those stores, that's a pretty, from what I've typically seeing, that's a pretty big marketing budget per store. Is that paying dividends yet, or are you still trying to get brand awareness out there?
We're spending about half that right now, because that's all I have. But that's our target, is that number. We think in order to fill the stores up the way we want to fill them, to hit the volume we want, that's what's going to be necessary.
Okay. Yeah, and that's very interesting that you say that, because a lot of people scoff at spending money on advertising. It's come free for so long or almost free with very inexpensive forum, sponsorships, and then Facebook was free for a long time, and it's almost become non-existent that you can get free advertising on Facebook. So, if you guys are already committed to $10,000 a month and you're looking to $20,000 a month, it's you've got to have some data behind that with the con media guys and everything you're doing to get people in the doors and keep your bays full. So is that the kind of the metric that you're looking at, is just, billable hours for each tech?
Yes, but honestly, way back when the business was small, I had a very positive experience with advertising.
Okay.
In the print media, and I understand the value of advertising. I read an article once about Wrigley Spearmint Gum, and he used to travel in a train a lot. By the way, he had his own train car, back before.
Okay.
Wrigley Spearmint Gum's been around a long time, and he was a very wealthy guy. And he hired a new young executive, and he said, "Well, everybody knows who Wrigley Spearmint Gum is. It's by every cash register in the country. Why do you advertise?" And he looked at the young man and said, "If you disconnected the train from the engine from the train, how long do you think it would run before it came to a stop?"
Yeah.
And he said, "The engine is the advertising." So with that vision, or that knowledge that he imparted on me as a wise old man, I started spending $25,000 a month in car and driving, road and track back in like 1986.
Wow. Yep.
In Auto Week. That was a lot of money back then. I mean, full page ads. But literally within 6 months, my business doubled.
Yeah.
And then I started running experiments. Like, I would run different types of ads. And what I noticed was, if a product was listed in an ad, it would sell at twice the rate if it wasn't. And I give you a really specific answer. We actually, when we first started releasing EEPROMs, which is early chip tuning, before we had flash, we listed all the cars, 325, a 535, and the year, make, model, and the chip, and the price.
Okay.
And once a month, we'd leave one of them off.
Okay.
Just one of the 25 chips we had. Okay. And every time we did that, that car sold half as much that month.
Wow.
Like, people couldn't extrapolate that because you made it for every car, you'd also make it for theirs. They wouldn't call and ask. They had to see their car. Okay. And there was no way to look it up on the internet back in those days. So that burned a hole in my brain that advertising can't work if it's done correctly. And I still believe that to be true. It's just different ways now.
Very cool. Yeah, that's quite a good insight. I appreciate that. It's advertising is tough, and so you sounds like you've got a good grasp on it and are ready to spend the money necessary to keep that going.
Well, the hard part now is there's so many places to advertise.
Yeah.
It used to be simple, right? There was 3 or 4 car magazines, there was 3 television channels. The decision making wasn't hard, right? Now it's like TV, internet, Facebook, YouTube. It just goes on and on and on and on and on, forums, and it's like how much you spend with each one. And so the hardest thing about modern advertising is just there's so many places to go, and where is the most value?
Man,
and that's very hard to determine, I think.
Yep. So just kind of to close out here, we've got a couple like quick answer questions. What is maybe a game-changing product that you've seen in the last year? And this can even be something that you guys have developed that's, really kind of pushing the industry further.
I don't know if there's been anything, honestly, that's been released in recent years. I mean, flash tuning, when it came out, was the last really big thing with cars, especially with turbos, because it's so easy to make power with them. But I don't really see any
no big paradigm shifts later. Yeah,
no. I don't believe so. No.
Yeah, that's it. It's kind of I kind of get the sentiment that's been the way. A lot of people are kind of saying that is, it's just been incremental improvements. A little bit better fuel injector, or you get a little bit better turbine wheel, or just little baby steps. To get everything, just make it a little bit better, but nothing huge.
I mean, computers were a big change in cars back in the 80s, 70s and 80s, but that's been a long time ago. And CAN buses and now FlexRay and all the communication networks in the cars was a big change too in the 90s. But it's all really well established now, and all we're doing now is continuously refining and reducing the manufacturing costs.
Yeah, I'm pretty curious to see how the variable compression engines go. I know Infiniti just released theirs to the public. Going to be interested to see if any of the German manufacturers put that in any of their high-end cars, because they've had the variable vane turbos for a while, but never a variable displacement engine. So I'm hoping that kind of takes hold, but it's very complicated. So I don't know what their durability testing is going to be, or if you'll be able to make that better if it does come to fruition.
I think it's a very significant change in the efficiency of the internal combustion engine as a result of hybrid technology and turbochargers like Formula One. I think the thermal efficiency of a Formula One engine used to be like 26%. I think it's like 49 now.
I was going to say, I thought it was like right at 50. Like, it's pretty wild.
Yeah, so it's almost double what it was 20 years ago. So that's growing at a very quick rate, and sort of needs to, because it's the only way the internal combustion engine is going to stick around and not be replaced by the electric cars if it continues to make those kind of improvements. So that's kind of exciting, but that's on an OEM level, not an aftermarket level.
Yep.
All we're doing is receiving that and retuning it a little bit is all we're doing. And I think that trend is going to continue, because I don't think gasoline cars are going to go away in the short term, even when self-driving cars come along, because there's certain things electric cars do really well. They're great in traffic. They're quiet. They don't burn any fuel. They don't make much smog. But power density of the gasoline engine, power for a given weight of the vehicle is so much higher in a gasoline engine than anything else. I don't see anything on the horizon that's going to challenge that. And I think all your really super performance cars are going to be like a 918 Porsche, gasoline in the back, an electric hybrid in the front, something like that. So it'll make 1,000 horsepower in a clean way, but you're not going to get that much energy out of just the battery by itself or the electric motor without making the car weigh too much, and then it won't be a good performance car.
Yeah, I took a ride in a 918 once and was totally blown away. I did not know that sort of power was available, was even capable of happening. So, yeah, I'm excited to see what else they come out with, as time progresses.
No, it's an amazing car, and then the race version, the 919, is in my opinion, to date, the coolest car ever made.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. So I know you've got, a pretty good garage of vehicles you get to drive, but what is like your go-to daily driver, grocery getting commuter car?
Oh, this is going to make people cry, though, because car and driver once told me nobody'd ever drive a Dinan BMW to a grocery store, but I used to every day. When they were doing a road test one time. I have a 911 Turbo S, which is my daily commuter. Nice. It's, of course, been modified.
Wow, yeah. They are the most comfortable cars ever, so I see it being very feasible.
And I have a C63 new AMG Coupe that's also been modified. M4 is more of a track day car for me.
Yep.
Those are my three cars right now. I'm also a motorcycle guy, so I have a lot of motorcycles too. So.
Oh, yeah. I took mine out for a ride this morning. It was really nice. So went for a little morning ride before I got going today, and it was wonderful. So, yeah, it's getting to be good weather for that. And I'm guessing you guys get that pretty much year-round.
Yeah, we do pretty much, yeah. We still ride in December and January out here, so there'll be days where it's raining, but there'll still be days where it's nice. So we still get once or twice a month we get to go for a ride, even in the middle of the winter.
Awesome. Well, just wanted to give you an opportunity here to kind of tell people, if they want more information about the company, or maybe they've got a supercar that needs some maintenance or some upgrades, where can they go to find out more information about your company?
It's carbonautoworks.com. And I'd like to also add something for parents, if that's okay.
Okay, yeah.
When I was a kid, I was labeled a troublemaker and a juvenile delinquent because I used to basically drive too fast in my mother's station wagon and try and outrun the police.
Okay.
And when I was 17 years old, my mother threw me out of the house because I was having sex with my girlfriend, smoking pot, and outrunning the cops in her car. And what they really need to do is they need to buy me a go-kart and send me to the racetrack and focus me. And nobody in my family had ever raced, and they didn't understand that it was a career choice. They thought it was a juvenile delinquent. It was just a career choice. That's what it really was. And they didn't recognize it. And the teachers in school didn't recognize it either. And so I wound up, like kids do when they get disciplined a lot, being a little bit of a smart ass and that sort of thing. So I think, almost every human being has some potential if someone can recognize what it is and focus them in the right direction. I think that's the responsibility of teachers and parents. And I know sometimes it's hard to do, but I think if you put a little energy into it, it can be done a lot more.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of the car guys probably have a similar upbringing as yourself. Just needed some direction and some guidance into something cool to expend your energy on.
Yeah, I mean, my dad had a guy at work that used to race in SCCA, and if he would have taken me to the racetrack to make me a mechanic for the guy to work on his race car, I would have been
busy. Yeah,
I would have stayed out of trouble probably. But some reason it never dawned on him. I don't know why.
Yeah, I've seen some pictures on the internet is teach your kid how to work on a car and you'll never have enough money for drugs and alcohol. So I think that's kind of how it seems to be for a lot of people.
That's why I never got into any kind of hard drugs any more than smoke a little bit of pot when I was a kid, because I needed the money for my car. So I completely understand that.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, thanks again. I really appreciate you taking some time to tell us, your story, and I'm excited to hear and see, what you do with the business. And so I'm hoping that you're able to expand it across the country so that if I ever have a supercar, I want to be able to take it to one of your facilities.
Sounds great. Thank you for your time.
Cool. Thanks a lot.
All right, Todd, good luck with the business.
Thanks for listening to Do It for a Living. You can find out more about this guest, this show, and even details about what we just talked about at our website. Check out the Facebook page at facebook.com/doitforaliving and tell us who you want to hear from. And most importantly, subscribe to the podcast. Click subscribe. Do it now. Seriously. I'll wait while you grab your phone. Open up the podcast app. Tap the subscribe button. When you subscribe, you help us gain momentum and attract more high-level guests. Thanks for listening, and good luck.